She's not polished enough for the brand. That's what Aaron said when the board questioned her role in the company she built from scratch. But when he sat down to acquire a rising facial recognition firm, the deal slipped through his fingers. Why? Because the founder had already sold it to Phoenix Intelligence, her company, her rules. And when she walked into his boardroom, the only document she brought was an offer to buy him out. His smirk faded the second he realized who controlled the pen. Where in the world are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. Have you ever been overlooked and stayed silent just long enough to be heard? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Black Stories Untold with love, and ring that notification bell for more heartwarming stories that celebrate strength. The ballroom shimmered like a dream built from glass and ego. Waiters in black tuxedos glided between white linen tables. Strings of gold lights traced the ceiling like constellations, and the hum of designer perfume mingled with the quiet pulse of money. It was not just a gala, it was a coronation, and at its center stood Aaron Wilde. He raised a crystal glass as if it were a crown. His tailored suit clung perfectly to broad shoulders, and silver hair brushed back in effortless defiance of time. The room watched him the way people watch fire, mesmerized, dangerous. His voice carried without force. It did not need volume. He simply said one word: vision. Then he smiled like he had invented the concept. People clapped, flutes clinked, cameras flashed, all of it choreographed in the theater of wealth. Aaron moved through the crowd like a man who owned it. Heads turned as he passed, hands reached for handshakes. He offered a few. Polished. Empty. His gaze scanned for board members, influencers, power brokers, everyone who mattered, everyone who might say yes to his next big move. Then the room shifted. It was not dramatic, not loud, just a subtle change in temperature. Heads turned, but slower this time, whispered curiosity. Aaron followed their gaze. She walked in as if she had every right to. Tatum ONeill. No entourage. No announcement, just her. A sleeveless white dress hugged her body like it was designed for that one night alone. Her skin caught the chandelier light like bronze dipped in fire. Her hair framed her face in soft coils that brushed her collarbone. She wore no diamonds. No designer logo screamed for attention. Just a quiet elegance that left the air breathless. People noticed her. Not because she was flashy, but because she was unapologetically still. And in a room full of noise, stillness made the loudest sound. Aaron's smirk returned, slower now. Calculated. He stepped toward her with the same confidence he had used to step away years ago. The same confidence he used when he said she would slow him down. That her dreams were too small for his empire. She did not flinch when he approached. Her chin lifted a fraction. Her eyes were unreadable. He leaned in, just enough to feel powerful again. He let the silence stretch. Then he asked if she was still designing apps in coffee shops. Her lips curved, not quite into a smile. Not quite into anything at all. It was the kind of expression that made a man second-guess everything he thought he knew. She stepped past him without a word. Her heels made sharp sounds on the marble floor. Click, click. Like punctuation at the end of a sentence she never needed to say. Aaron watched her walk to the front row of the gala. Not the back, not the press section, but the seats reserved for owners. She took her place with the quiet confidence of someone who already knew how the story would end. Aaron blinked. A tremor of something unfamiliar moved through him. It was not fear. Not yet, but it was close. Because in that moment he realized something he had never considered before. She was not here as his past. She was here as his future. The apartment was barely livable. One window rattled in the frame every time a truck passed, and the ancient ceiling fan wheezed more than it cooled. A mattress lay on the floor, draped in thin sheets, and the scent of leftover noodles hung in the air like a tired promise. But none of that mattered. Not to her. Not to them. Tatum ONeill sat cross-legged in front of a second-hand laptop, eyes flickering between lines of code and a notebook filled with sketches. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, building something from nothing. The prototype pulsed to life, crude but functional. She wiped sweat from her temple and called Aaron over. He had been pacing, half talking to himself about venture capital, pitch decks, the next meeting with some guy named Whitman. He came over, glanced at the screen, and nodded like he expected it all along. She smiled anyway, not because he noticed, but because it worked. Nights blurred into mornings. They lived on cheap coffee, cheaper food, and that electric thread that binds two people who believe in something bigger than they can explain. She carried the vision in her chest. He carried it in his mouth. He was the talker. She was the builder. He told her he loved her every time they got a yes. After the first investor, after the first wire hit their joint account, after they signed the lease on a small co-working space with a shared fridge and peeling paint. Each time, he said the words with more adrenaline than intimacy. But she clung to them. She had to. The day everything changed, it was quiet. Too quiet. He came home late, suit jacket slung over his arm. His face was unreadable. She knew that look. Knew before he spoke that something had shifted. He sat across from her, placed his phone on the table screen down, and said the board had questions about her role, about optics, about polish. She waited for him to push back, to defend her, to remind them she had built the core engine from nothing but sleep deprivation and brilliance. He looked at his hands, then at the floor, then at her. This is just business. She waited for more. For a but, for a contradiction. There was none, just silence thick enough to drown in. He stood to leave, said he needed space to think. She did not cry, not then, just stared at the cracked ceiling above their bed and wondered how someone could rewrite history while standing in the middle of it. By morning, half his clothes were gone, the keys to the office were on the counter, and a new name had been filed with the state. His alone. She opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered above the keys. She stared at the lines of code she had written and tried to find herself in them. The cursor blinked like an insult. He had taken everything but the code, and now she would rewrite the future without him. Tatum packed her things in silence. No farewell post, no middle finger to the world. Just a cardboard box with tangled chargers, coffee-stained notebooks, and one framed photo from a time that now felt fictional. She left the co-working space without looking back, walked 2 blocks to a new building that still smelled like fresh paint, and signed a lease in her own name. It was quiet there, just the low hum of machines and the clatter of her fingers on a keyboard. She liked it that way. No noise, no eyes, just work. In those first months, she did not talk much, not to friends, not to family. She let the world think she had disappeared. Let Aaron take the spotlight and the headlines and the magazine covers. He smiled with perfect teeth and said things like next gen and disruption and scaled impact. Tatum said nothing, but her silence was not absence. It was planning. She filed the name Phoenix Intelligence on a rainy Thursday, not for flair, for meaning, because ashes are not the end, they are what you build from. Her first hires were women with names the industry often mispronounced. She brought in minds from Morehouse, from Spelman, from communities where genius was born in spite of the world, not because of it. They built in the shadows. Coded between daycare pickups and part-time jobs, tested algorithms not for profit, but for fairness, for balance, for dignity. Tatum did not chase press. When tech journalists called, she let it go to voicemail. When investors knocked, she answered only if they understood the vision. Not the profits, the purpose. Within 4 years, Phoenix Intelligence was running behind the curtain of half the apps people used without knowing. Healthcare, criminal justice, education, ethical AI systems that did not just predict outcomes but interrogated the data behind them. Her name was not on the credits, but her fingerprint was everywhere. Still, she stayed small by choice, quiet by design, until WildeTech circled. A junior analyst brought the news in on a Wednesday morning. Tatum barely looked up from her screen when he said Aaron Wilde was trying to acquire Lumi, one of her incubator firms. Facial recognition, black-led, barely 2 years old. Tatum sat back in her chair. She knew what WildeTech would do with that technology, what they always did: rebrand, monetize, strip it of soul. She did not raise her voice. She simply asked her assistant to call Lumi's founder, then her legal team, then her board. By the end of the week, she had secured controlling interest in the startup. Quietly, efficiently, a single document landed on Aaron's desk 2 days later. Terms had changed. The seller was no longer Lumi. The seller was Phoenix Intelligence. He read the name twice. Tatum did not wait for his reaction. She was already preparing the next move. The room was built to intimidate. Dark walnut walls, polished obsidian table that reflected every flicker of discomfort. A minimalist clock ticked just loud enough to remind people who held the power. Aaron Wilde entered without hesitation, briefcase in hand, cufflinks catching the morning light. He was used to this theater, knew exactly how to own a room before he even opened his mouth. Board members sat in their designated places, postures rigid, expressions unreadable. Legal counsel occupied the far end, sipping espresso like it was a performance enhancer. Aaron nodded as he took his seat at the head, confident this would be another simple acquisition. Just another small firm folded neatly into WildeTech's growing portfolio. Then the doors opened. She didn't glide. She walked, controlled, certain. She wore no blazer, no visible brand, just a black turtleneck tucked into high-waisted slacks, black boots silent on the marble floor. Her curls framed her face like a crown that needed no jewels. She carried nothing but presence. Aaron's smile flickered. For a moment, just a moment. Then it returned, thinner now. He leaned back in his chair as if to say, "This is cute, but we both know who runs this show." Tatum did not sit immediately. She opened a sleek folder and placed it in front of him. One copy, no fanfare. Aaron glanced at the cover page, blinked once. Phoenix Intelligence, acquisition proposal, buyer, Tatum ONeill. The room stilled. He chuckled, low and amused, a sound that once disarmed investors. He pushed the folder back across the table. "This isn't how this works," he said, his voice smooth but tight. "This is my boardroom." Tatum finally sat, folded her hands, tilted her head. "No," she said, "this is your exit strategy." He opened the folder again, flipping through numbers, valuations, transition terms. The offer was clear. WildeTech's stock had been declining for 5 quarters. Regulatory trouble, internal lawsuits. Phoenix Intelligence was offering a full buyout, but the price tag was a fraction of what he expected. He looked up, furious now, but measured. "You're bluffing." Tatum didn't blink. "Sweetheart, I don't bluff. I build." She turned to the board, her voice even. WildeTech needs restructuring, ethics violations, leadership instability, outdated infrastructure. You've known that for a while. My firm brings stability, credibility, and capital. Aaron leaned forward. He wanted to speak, to regain control, but words caught in his throat. She continued, "This isn't personal. This is survival. For your staff, your shareholders. Your name? That's optional." The lawyers exchanged glances. One of the board members cleared his throat. Another adjusted her glasses. No one defended him. Aaron Wilde, once the man with every answer, sat in silence. Across from him, Tatum ONeill watched without triumph, her expression unreadable, her presence undeniable, and for the first time in a decade, Aaron realized he wasn't leading the future. He was being folded into it. The news broke like thunder in a clear sky. At exactly 12 o'clock, inboxes buzzed and headlines refreshed. Phoenix Intelligence acquires WildeTech in historic black-led tech merger. By 12:05, it was trending. By 12:30, it was everywhere. Screens lit up in elevators and airports and cafes across the country. TechCrunch dissected the numbers. CNN interviewed analysts who used words like unprecedented and shift in power. Essence told a different story, one about legacy, one about quiet brilliance finally getting a seat at the head of the table. The photograph made it real. Aaron Wilde, once the darling of Silicon Valley, was captured by a freelance journalist leaving the WildeTech building. No entourage, no statement. Just him in a dark overcoat, walking alone, jaw clenched, eyes somewhere far away. The caption read no comment, but his silence said everything. Tatum did not read the articles. She had already lived them. She sat on the stoop of a brownstone in Harlem, one leg folded under the other, a Tupperware of strawberries in her lap. Beside her was Zion, 10 years old, sharp-eyed and soft-voiced, knees scraped from a fall earlier that morning, but too proud to mention it. He held a tablet in one hand, scrolling past the headlines. "Is that your company?" he asked, pointing to the logo on the press release. She nodded, peeling the stem off a berry. "That's Phoenix." He paused. "And the other one?" "WildeTech." "That used to belong to someone I knew," she said carefully. He turned toward her, eyes curious. The kind of look that came from years of noticing things adults tried to hide. "Did he work for you?" She laughed softly, more breath than sound. "No, baby. He worked for himself." "What happened to him?" She handed him a piece of fruit and leaned back against the warm brick. "He got bought." Zion blinked. "You bought his company?" "Yes." He was quiet for a moment, chewing, thinking. Then he asked the question she had both expected and feared. "Was he mean to you?" Tatum looked up at the sky, then down at her son. "Number." "Not at first." "Why did you buy his company?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she watched a pigeon land on the edge of the stoop, pecking at nothing. She tucked a curl behind Zion's ear. "Because I needed to protect something important. From him. From people like him." Zion seemed satisfied with that. He nodded, then went back to scrolling. She watched him in the golden light of early afternoon, saw how he looked like her around the eyes but carried a stillness that was all his own. The world thought this was a power move, a play for control, a dramatic reversal, but she knew better. This was reclamation, of voice, of value, of every room she had been forced to walk out of every word spoken over her like prophecy, unfit, unready, unseen. She kissed the top of her son's head and whispered more to herself than to him. "It's not revenge when it belongs to you." It was nearly midnight when the knock came. Tatum looked up from her screen, eyes tired but focused. The office was quiet, city lights casting long shadows on the concrete floor. Everyone had gone home hours ago. Everyone but her. She didn't need to ask who it was. She rose slowly, smoothing the sleeves of her sweater, and opened the door. Aaron Wilde stood there, no longer the man in tailored suits with the world on a string. His shirt was wrinkled, top button undone, hair tousled like he had run his hands through it too many times. He looked like someone who had wandered too long without direction. He didn't step in. "Can I talk to you?" She nodded once and stepped aside. He entered cautiously, as if the walls might reject him. The space was clean, modern, purposeful. No photos, no clutter, just precision and calm. He took it in like someone arriving late to a story already halfway told. She waited, arms folded, not to shield herself, but to remind him this was not the same woman he left behind. He didn't meet her eyes at first. His voice, when it came, was quiet. "Is he mine?" The question hung in the air like fog. Heavy, inevitable. Tatum didn't flinch, didn't pace, didn't reach for drama or memory. She just looked at him, steady, certain. Yes. Aaron blinked, once, then again, slower. He looked like someone trying to steady a table with a missing leg. 10. 10. He swallowed hard. A crack formed behind his eyes. "You should have told me. I tried." Silence stretched between them. He knew better than to argue. He had left, and when he left, he closed the door behind him. "What's his name?" "Zion." He nodded slowly, like the word itself held weight. Then his voice dropped lower, almost breaking. "I don't want to be forgiven. I just want to be better." Tatum leaned against the desk, her face unreadable. "Why now?" "Because I saw him. Not in person. In the way you protect what you build. In the way you don't flinch when the world tries to shrink you. I saw pieces of myself and realized they were never mine to hold. I gave up something I never should have let go." She stared at him for a long time, long enough to make him wonder if silence was her final answer. "You'll need to earn his name." He looked up, confused. "And mine," she added. She didn't mean legally. She didn't mean biologically. She meant the right to stand beside them, to be more than the echo of a man who once chose himself. He nodded. Not because it was easy, but because it was true. Then he turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "Thank you," he whispered. She didn't respond. But as the door clicked softly behind him, she allowed herself one breath. One glance at the corner of her desk, where a crayon drawing of a rocket ship sat folded and waiting. He had missed the launch, but maybe, just maybe, he would be there for the flight. The park smelled like spring and possibility. Zion sat on the edge of a low stone wall, legs swinging, one shoelace undone and dust from the playground painting his jeans. His backpack lay beside him, half-zipped, a model of the solar system peeking through like it was trying to escape. He was still, but not relaxed. His eyes flicked sideways as Aaron approached. Tatum watched from a nearby bench, phone untouched, gaze steady. She had offered no coaching, no warning, just said that Zion had agreed to meet and that Aaron should bring nothing but honesty. Aaron approached slowly, hands empty. No toys, no gifts, just breath and nerves. Zion looked up, squinting against the light. "You're tall," he said flatly. Aaron smiled faintly. "So are you." "For 10, I'm 10.5. "Of course." Zion narrowed his eyes like he was trying to solve an equation too simple to be real. "You used to be rich." Aaron paused. "I used to think I was." "That's not what I said." Aaron nodded. He sat down on the wall beside him, leaving space between them. "I thought money made me important, that it made me enough, but it didn't make me a father." Zion said nothing, but he didn't get up either. The silence between them wasn't hostile, just uncertain, like a path that hadn't been walked in a long time. They met again the next Saturday, then again the week after that. No cameras, no statements, just Aaron showing up. At science fairs where Zion barely acknowledged him. At soccer practices where he stood on the sideline and cheered even when Zion missed. At a planetarium night where Zion sat cross-legged on a blanket and pointed out Orion, then asked quietly if Aaron knew the names of any stars. "I know I've missed a lot," Aaron said. Zion's voice was almost a whisper. "Then stop missing things." They began to talk, not like old friends, but like two people willing to try. Zion asked hard questions. "Why did you leave? Why didn't you call? Why now? Aaron never rushed the answers, never offered excuses, only truths. Awkward, uneven, real. They built a rhythm. Tuesdays became telescope nights. Sundays were for soccer. Sometimes they talked about the sky. Sometimes they said nothing at all. One night, lying in the grass, Zion looked up and said, "I know about rocket fuel now." "Oh yeah? It's not the fire that matters. It's the push. You have to keep showing up or it doesn't fly." Aaron turned his head, watching the boy who looked so much like Tatum in the way he thought before he spoke. "Then I'll keep showing up," he said, "even if I mess it up." Zion didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I think you're getting better at not messing it up." And in that moment, beneath a quiet sky and next to a boy he never stopped thinking about, Aaron Wilde felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope, not for redemption, but for relationship. The house smelled like roasted garlic and thyme, not perfect, but warm, the kind of scent that made a place feel lived in. Tatum moved through the kitchen with practiced ease, hair tied up, a tea towel thrown over her shoulder. The table was already set, 3 mismatched placemats, a vase of sunflowers in the center, and Zion's favorite lemon water pitcher sweating in the middle of the spread. The doorbell rang. She wiped her hands, checked her reflection in the microwave door, not for beauty, but for calm, and opened it. Aaron stood there holding a foil-covered dish in both hands like it was sacred. No suit, just jeans, sneakers, and an apron still tied around his waist. "I baked," he said, lifting it a little. "Cobbler. I followed a video, and then another video to fix what the first video ruined." She stepped aside, fighting the smile that threatened. "Come in before it cools more than it already has." Zion came skidding around the corner, socks sliding on hardwood. He looked from Tatum to Aaron, then grinned. "You really cooked?" "Sort of," Aaron admitted. "The oven did most of the work, but yeah." Zion took the dish with great ceremony and marched it to the counter like it was a trophy. Tatum raised an eyebrow as she watched Aaron wash his hands and dry them on a towel like he belonged. Dinner wasn't fancy. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans with too much garlic because Zion had insisted on seasoning them himself. The 3 of them sat around the table, plates full, hands occasionally brushing, laughter punctuating the awkward silences. They talked about school, about work, Zion's new obsession with designing his own video game. Aaron listened with a focus Tatum had never seen from him when they were younger. He didn't interrupt, didn't check his phone. He just listened. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Cobbler in bowls, still warm and uneven. Aaron's crust was too thick on one side, too thin on the other. Tatum made a face on the first bite, then nodded. "It's edible," she said, which honestly surprised me. "Progress," Aaron replied, taking her sarcasm as a win. Zion leaned into his mother, sticky fingers and all, and asked softly, "Can Daddy stay until bedtime?" Tatum hesitated. She looked at Aaron. He looked back, and for once there was no calculation in his expression. Just quiet hope. She nodded. They helped with homework. Played a round of a messy board game with missing pieces. Zion laughed so hard at one point he nearly spilled his juice. Aaron cleaned it up without fanfare. When it was time for bed, Zion hugged them both, his voice muffled in Tatum's sweater. As she walked Aaron to the door, the night quiet around them, he paused on the threshold. "I know this isn't about us," he said. "I'm not confused." Tatum nodded. "This isn't about romance. It's about responsibility." "You gave me a second chance," Aaron said, voice low. "I won't waste it." She searched his face for signs of performance. Found none. "Then don't," she said, and closed the door gently behind him. The new headquarters stood tall in the center of the city, all clean glass and sharp lines. But what happened inside was softer, more intentional, the kind of space where ideas weren't just nurtured, they were protected. Tatum walked the halls slowly on opening day, her heels silent on the polished floor. Employees greeted her with nods of respect, not fear. She'd made that clear from day one. You could bring your full self here. You didn't have to shrink to fit the room. She had debated the name for months. Some people expected her to erase everything WildeTech stood for. Others assumed she'd leave it untouched out of spite or indifference. Instead, she did what she had always done. She reimagined. Phoenix Wilde, not a merger of brands, but a marriage of intent and redemption. Phoenix, for rebirth. Wilde, for truth reclaimed. The logo stayed clean, bold. The vision behind it shifted. On the first floor, where a gold statue of Aaron once stood, there was now a mural, floor to ceiling, of Black inventors, engineers, and visionaries. Mary Van Britten Brown, Granville T. Woods, Lisa Galopter, names no one had taught in school, now painted in color and motion. Their stories bled into the walls like sacred ink. Below the mural, etched into the marble in a quiet corner, were two names in the same font, Tatum ONeill, Zion Wilde. Not for vanity, for memory, for permanence. Aaron stood to the side that day, away from the cameras. He wore a gray suit, simple tie, his badge clipped to his blazer like everyone else's. Advisor, it read. Not CEO, not founder, just one word. Enough. He watched as Tatum cut the ribbon, not with oversized scissors, but with her son beside her, both their hands on the blade. When it sliced through the silk, the applause was thunderous. Zion beamed. Tatum didn't smile wide, just nodded once, like the moment had already lived in her mind and now simply caught up to her. Later that afternoon, Aaron walked the building alone. Each floor held something new. A lactation room with art on the walls, meditation spaces, all-gender restrooms, conference rooms named after changemakers instead of donors. There was one named Audrey, one named Baldwin, one named Ida. It felt nothing like the company he once built. It felt better. He entered his small office, no view, no assistants, just a desk, a plant, and a shelf with technical journals. He didn't resent it, he was learning, sitting under the people he once overlooked. His opinion still mattered, but so did everyone else's. Tatum visited him later that day. She leaned against the door frame with a coffee in hand. For a second, they were just two people with years behind them, and a child who called them both home. "You okay with this?" she asked. He looked around, at the walls, the light, the weight that was no longer crushing. "It's the first time this place feels honest," he said. Tatum nodded, then pushed off the door frame and walked away. And Aaron, left in the quiet hum of a future he no longer controlled, whispered a quiet truth to himself. This is what building looks like. The ballroom glowed in warm amber light, soft jazz humming beneath the clinking of glasses and polite applause. Crystal chandeliers sparkled like they were in on the moment. It was Phoenix Wilde's first gala under its new name, but tonight the focus wasn't on founders or profit margins. It was on a boy with wide eyes and a steady voice, standing behind a podium that seemed almost too big, until he spoke. Zion adjusted the microphone with careful hands. His suit jacket was slightly too long in the sleeves, his bow tie a bit crooked, but his presence silenced the room. Tatum stood just behind him, hand resting on his shoulder like an anchor. Aaron watched from stage left, half in shadow, hands clasped tightly in front of him. He wasn't meant to be seen, not tonight, but he was there, present. Zion cleared his throat. 1 year ago, I didn't know what a legacy really meant. People said it was about leaving something behind, about money, power, buildings with your name on them. He paused, his voice steady despite the hundreds watching. But I've learned something different. Legacy isn't about who shouts the loudest. It's about who listens, who lifts, who shows up, even when it's hard. A hush fell across the crowd. No phones flashed, no whispers filled the corners. This year, with the help of Phoenix Wilde, we're launching the Sky Code Youth Initiative, a tech mentorship program for kids who look like me, kids who are brilliant but too often overlooked. We're going to build something, not just apps, but confidence, community, futures. He glanced back at his mother, who gave the smallest nod. Then his eyes moved toward the edge of the stage where Aaron stood. He didn't say anything more. He didn't have to. The crowd erupted in applause. Not polite, not performative. Real. Zion stepped back from the mic and was met by Tatum's quiet embrace. She kissed his temple, whispered something only he could hear. Aaron stayed in place, watching his son, his chest full of something that once resembled regret but now leaned more toward gratitude. Tatum caught his eye briefly. Just a flicker, no smile, but no distance either. Later, as guests danced and executives networked and caterers passed tiny desserts on porcelain trays, Zion sat cross-legged on the floor backstage, eating a slice of cake with his hands. His tie was gone, shirt untucked, hair wild from a night of photos and praise. Aaron crouched beside him, holding a second slice. "You were incredible tonight," he said. Zion shrugged, licking frosting off his thumb. "I was just telling the truth. That's what made it incredible." They sat in silence for a moment, chewing. "Do you think I'll be good at this?" Zion asked suddenly. "At what? Leading something, building something, like you and Mom." Aaron looked at him carefully. "You already are. But when it gets hard, and it will, just remember what you said on that stage. Lift others, show up, and be honest." Zion nodded slowly, thoughtfully. Aaron placed his empty plate to the side, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded photo. It was from the first time they looked at the stars together. Just two silhouettes and a telescope. "For your room," he said. Zion took it, unfolded it gently, and smiled. "I'll put it on the wall." And for Aaron Wilde, standing in the afterglow of a life he almost missed, that was more than enough. Don't let this story end here. Share it forward. Somewhere, a builder is being told she doesn't belong. Somewhere, a father is wondering if it's too late to show up. This isn't just a video. It's a reminder that legacy isn't loud, but it lasts. Be part of the echo. Let it reach them. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, drop a comment, and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe to Black Stories Untold for more stories that uncover hidden struggles, celebrate strength, and remind us that every voice matters.